Charlotte Hayes had never imagined that inheriting her grandmother's old Victorian manor in the remote English village of Ravenswood would change her life forever. The town was small and isolated, surrounded by dense, ancient woods that locals believed were cursed. Charlotte, a pragmatic historian, arrived one gloomy autumn afternoon, hoping to find some peace and maybe uncover the truth behind the strange stories her grandmother once whispered about. The manor was imposing, with its darkened windows and peeling paint, standing silent against the backdrop of rustling trees and overcast skies. As she crossed the threshold, the heavy wooden door creaked ominously behind her. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of aged wood. Faded portraits of grim ancestors lined the walls, watching her with eyes that seemed too lifelike. Charlotte set down her suitcase and began to explore the sprawling house. The floorboards groaned under her feet, echoing through the empty halls. It felt as if the house itself was breathing, waiting. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Charlotte found an old leather-bound diary tucked away in a drawer of her grandmother's study. The pages were yellowed and fragile, filled with hurried handwriting describing nights filled with eerie whispers and shadowy figures lurking just beyond sight. Her grandmother wrote of the whispering shadows, restless spirits trapped between worlds, bound to the forest and the village. Charlotte's skepticism wavered as she read tales of villagers disappearing without a trace and strange lights flickering deep in the woods at midnight. As night fell, Charlotte's unease grew. The manor's silence was shattered by faint footsteps echoing through the halls. Whispers floated on the cold air, barely audible yet unmistakable. She lit a candle, its flickering flame casting long shadows that danced along the walls. Suddenly, a chilling breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the candle. In the darkness, she caught a glimpse of a translucent figure, a woman in tattered white garments, her hollow eyes pleading silently before vanishing into the gloom. The next morning, Charlotte ventured into Ravenswood Village, hoping to find answers. The townsfolk were tight-lipped, their faces etched with fear and suspicion. An elderly man finally broke the silence, warning her to leave before the shadows claimed her as they had so many before. Despite the warnings, Charlotte's curiosity pushed her deeper into the village's dark history. She learned of a woman accused of witchcraft centuries ago, executed at the edge of the forest, whose curse was said to bind the village in eternal torment. Determined to uncover the truth, Charlotte followed cryptic notes from her grandmother's diary into the dense forest. The trees towered above her like silent guardians, their twisted branches clawing at the gray sky. The air grew colder, heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay. She stumbled upon an ancient stone circle etched with strange runes. As she stepped into the clearing, the whispers grew louder, surrounding her like a suffocating fog. Shadowy figures materialized from between the trees, their eyes glowing with sorrow and anger. Charlotte's heart pounded as she realized the full weight of the curse she had inherited. Suddenly, a sharp voice cut through the night, screaming her name. Panic surged through her veins as she turned to run, but the forest seemed to close in around her, branches snagging at her clothes and roots tripping her steps. She stumbled and fell, her breath ragged in the cold air. As darkness closed in, she heard the faintest whisper, "Set us free." Charlotte woke up shivering on the damp forest floor. Her clothes were torn, and a deep gash throbbed on her forehead. The morning light filtered weakly through the gnarled trees above, but something felt off. The forest was too quiet. No birds, no wind, only a heavy silence that pressed against her skull like a scream held back for centuries. She sat up slowly, memories from the night before flooding her mind. The stone circle, the glowing eyes, the whisper, "Set us free." A voice not quite human, and not quite evil, but haunting, pleading. As she looked around, she saw faint footprints in the muddy earth, small, barefoot, as if children had been walking in circles around her. Her heart sank. She made her way back to the manor, head spinning. In the daylight, the house looked no less sinister. It loomed like a sleeping beast, watching her approach with unseen eyes. But she felt different now. She wasn't just a visitor anymore. She was connected, chosen, cursed. After a warm shower and hastily bandaged head, Charlotte returned to the diary. Skimming through older pages she'd missed, she found something new. A name: Edith Graythorne, the so-called witch. According to legend, Edith had been a healer accused of stealing children to perform dark rituals. She was burned alive at the forest's edge during the Ravenswood trials of 1647. But just before the fire took her, she screamed a curse into the trees. "You killed me to hide your own sins. I'll return, and I won't return alone." Charlotte's fingers trembled as she traced the ink. There were drawings of the stone circle, scribbled maps, mentions of shadows trapped between death and truth. She looked up and whispered to herself, "They're not haunting us. They're stuck." She made a plan. That night, Charlotte returned to the forest with supplies: salt, candles, iron nails, traditional protection against dark spirits. But also, she carried lavender, rosemary, and bones wrapped in cloth she'd found hidden under the manor's basement floorboards. Old bones. Human bones. Likely the very children the village had denied ever losing. The forest grew alive again as the sun disappeared. Branches twisted unnaturally. Whispers resumed, low and hungry, overlapping like 100 voices trying to speak through one mouth. But this time, she wasn't running. She entered the circle, set down the bones, lit the candles. The ground shuddered. Figures emerged. Pale children, translucent and wide-eyed. A woman stepped from behind them, blackened by fire, yet standing tall. Her eyes were filled with tears, not hatred. "Edith." Charlotte dropped to her knees. "I know what they did to you," she whispered. "I know they lied. You tried to protect them." Edith's lips moved, but the wind spoke for her. "They burned me to silence the truth." The children moved closer, surrounding the bones, weeping without sound. Charlotte reached into her bag and read aloud a passage she'd found hidden beneath the diary's leather cover, something written in Latin and half English. A plea for forgiveness, a ritual for release. As she spoke, the forest screamed. Trees bent backward, candles flickered violently, shadows shrieked as if tearing through dimensions. And then, silence. Edith smiled. Her body turned to ash and blew into the wind. One by one, the children faded into golden light, rising like fireflies into the sky. Dash dash dash. Charlotte collapsed inside the stone circle, sobbing uncontrollably. But they were tears of release. For the spirits. For herself. For her grandmother, who had lived her whole life knowing the truth and bearing its burden in silence. She stayed in Ravenswood for a year after that, documenting everything. Interviewing old villagers who finally began to speak. The manor lost its gloom. The forest felt lighter. The whispers never returned. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when the wind moves just right, she hears a soft voice carried through the trees. "Thank you, Charlotte." The house on Wither Lane. They said nobody lasted more than 3 nights in the house on Wither Lane. It was a 2-story colonial home, hidden behind tangled trees and rusting iron gates on the outskirts of Yorkshire, England. Once owned by the Ashcroft family, a line of respected aristocrats, it had become a shell of itself after 1911, when everyone inside vanished without a trace. No screams, no blood, just silence, and the smell of burnt roses. In 2024, American paranormal journalist Avery Blackwood decided to spend 7 nights there. For her YouTube channel Beyond the Veil, she had stayed in haunted hospitals, possessed cabins, even a cursed Romanian fortress. But none gave her the feeling this house did. The second she stepped on the grounds, her stomach tightened like it knew something she didn't. Avery arrived with a backpack, camera gear, and her black cat, Salem. The late October wind bit at her skin as she unlocked the rotting front door. Inside, the house was colder than outside. Time had stopped here. Dust-coated antique furniture, but it looked untouched. A violin sat on a table beside a porcelain doll. A teacup rested in mid-sip on the fireplace mantel. Everything was exactly as it had been the night the Ashcrofts vanished. That night, she set up her cameras. One in the hallway, one in the library, and one facing the staircase, where most reports of movement occurred. She lit a fire in the hearth using old logs that strangely never seemed to rot. At midnight, she whispered to her camera, "If something is here with me, make a sound." Seconds passed. Then, creak. Avery froze. The sound had come from the second floor. She looked at Salem, whose fur stood on end. Maybe old wood, she said, her voice unsure. But her camera confirmed it. Motion upstairs. A shadow moving where no one should be. The next morning, she reviewed the footage. One frame made her blood run cold. A tall, black figure standing at the top of the stairs, watching her sleep. It had no face, just a void where eyes should be. On day 2, things escalated. She found muddy footprints in the hallway, barefoot, small, and childlike. The windows locked themselves, mirrors fogged up without reason, and the whispers started. Late that night, while editing, she heard someone humming a lullaby. She followed the sound upstairs, flashlight shaking. The hallway smelled like earth and rotting flowers. Her light flickered, and standing at the end of the hall was a girl. Pale, wet, with empty sockets where eyes once lived. Then she smiled. Avery screamed and ran, but slipped, falling hard. When she looked up, the girl was gone. But scrawled on the wall in wet soot were the words, "She never left." In the library, she found a secret journal behind a loose brick. It belonged to Eleanor Ashcroft, the youngest daughter. Her final entry read, "Greater than, Mother sees things now. Dark things. Father says it's grief. But I saw her speaking to the wall last night. She said it promised her another son if she gave up something else. I think she meant me." Avery's hands shook. It wasn't just a haunted house. It was cursed. A deal gone wrong. A sacrifice. And whatever had been promised was never fulfilled. By night 3, Avery decided she wouldn't stay the full week. But the house had other plans. When she tried to leave the next morning, her car wouldn't start. Her phone showed no signal, not even emergency calls. The gate was chained shut from the outside. Worse, the house had grown colder, angrier. That evening, the shadows moved on their own. Chairs slid across floors. Her camera captured dozens of EVP recordings. Some sounded like a woman crying, others like a child begging. But one voice was louder than all. A low, male tone whispering, "She's mine now." Avery tried to sleep but was pulled awake by a sharp sting on her arm. She flipped on her light and saw long, dark scratches bleeding across her skin, as if from fingers too long to be human. She screamed. Salem hissed. A door slammed. The attic. She had never gone up there. Armed with a flashlight, she climbed the narrow staircase to the attic. The air was thick with rot and mildew. Rats scurried in corners, but something else moved too, slower. Heavier. She found a trunk sealed shut with wax markings, old demonic sigils. Inside was a skeleton, clutching a withered baby doll. But beside it was a letter in beautiful calligraphy. Greater than. We took her. She belonged to him now. Let this be the final Ashcroft sacrifice. Suddenly, a cold wind blew out her light. She was no longer alone. From the shadows emerged the thing. 7 feet tall, twisted with horns, black as tar, eyes like molten ash. Avery couldn't move. It spoke without a mouth. You entered without permission. But you stayed. And now, you offer yourself. She tried to run. The stairs melted beneath her. Rooms shifted like a maze. Time warped. But then, she remembered the journal. The final passage Eleanor wrote. Greater than. He fears mirrors. He fears truth. She found the largest mirror in the hall, held it up as the thing advanced. It screamed. Shadows peeled away. The house trembled. Glass shattered, but light poured from the mirror like dawn breaking inside darkness. The figure vanished in a burst of black smoke. Avery woke up outside the house at sunrise. Cameras intact. Salem curled beside her. The gates were open. Her phone worked. She left without looking back. Weeks later, when editing the footage, she noticed one final image in the reflection of the cracked mirror, a little girl waving and smiling. Behind her stood her mother. And behind her, the demon, still watching.